The new CFO laughed at my server rack, calling it pretty Décor before having it unplugged. He thought he was a comedian making jokes to the whole department, but I was the only one not laughing. Because I knew what was about to happen to their $100K per hour sales network. It started with a joke. Who decorated the closet? Radio Shack. Greg snorted into the mic, eyes gleaming with that startup smarm arrogance, like he just invented sarcasm and synergy in the same breath. The whole staff laughed. Well, most of them. The engineers fake laughed. The interns actually laughed, not knowing any better. Me? I just stared at the glowing rack of servers I'd nursed like a colicky child for 8 goddamn years. Thought this is the moment the idiot pressed detonate on his own career. He was our new CFO. Greg Darnell came in 3 weeks ago with a jawline sharp enough to slice deli meat and a resume laminated in buzzwords. Transformation, optimization, capital fluidity. Real Silicon Valley thesaurus, trademark energy. The board loved him because he used phrases like margin velocity and wore brown leather loafers without socks. Kinda guy who smells like oatmeal cologne and thinks AI stands for aggressive innovation. Now he was standing in the all hands, laser pointer in hand, highlighting my server rack like it was a middle school science fair project he planned to bully. This little guy here, he said, waving at my setup, has been running for, what, a decade. Legacy hardware? Completely redundant. We're spending, what, $2,400 a month to power Amanda's nostalgia museum. Time to pull the plug. Literally, the laughter died down just enough to hear the blood boiling behind my temples. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice, just sipped my burnt coffee, and watched this clown roast the only thing in this building that hadn't crashed since Obama's second term. I knew what they didn't. That rack was the beating heart behind their $100,000 per hour e-commerce backbone. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was necessity. It ran a homegrown transaction validator that their shiny, over-budget cloud infrastructure couldn't replicate without imploding under token drift. I told them. Hell, I documented it 6 different ways, but Greg skimmed the onboarding packet like it was a BuzzFeed quiz. And listen, if you're still here 3 paragraphs deep, clearly like watching corporate dumpster fires. So take a sec to subscribe and tap the like. Yeah. 97% of you just ghost these stories without following, and honestly, it kills the team faster than Greg killed our payment processor. Do it for justice or spite or both. Anyway, Greg wrapped up the meeting with his signature closer. Let's streamline the future, people. Translation. Let's unplug stuff I don't understand and hope no one notices until I've moved on to my next job in fintech. Back at my desk, I watched the company Slack light up like Times Square on meth. Big changes coming. Excited to optimize. Anyone know if Amanda's rack really is outdated? I didn't answer. Just logged into the validator node one last time, exported a full activity mirror to my private terminal, tagged one file with a single word pending. I had built that rack myself, sourced the parts on nights and weekends, kept the scripts lean, the protocols airtight. It was a Frankenstein's monster of efficient brutal code. No fluff. No APIs with cute names, just performance. It didn't care about morale. It processed data, fixed asynchronous bugs, and patched token conflicts in real time quietly, perfectly until now. Packed my plants into a tote bag, closed my laptop, and walked past Greg's office on the way out. He was laughing again. Something about finally getting rid of the clutter. I smiled. Not at him, through him, because I knew what was coming. They didn't unplug a server. They unplugged their parachute. They did it with a damn dolly. A couple guys from facilities rolled in around 8:47 a.m. One sipping an energy drink, the other chewing a granola bar like it owed him money. Either of them had a clue what they were touching. I watched from the corner of the server room, arms folded as they yanked the power leads like it was an old Christmas tree being tossed out in January. Got orders from Greg, the taller one muttered. Unplugged the nostalgia stack. The nostalgia stack. That's what he called it. Like it was a dusty pile of VHS tapes instead of the only thing standing between us and a full-blown transactional breakdown. The LEDs dimmed one by one like little dying stars. The fan slowed. The went silent. And with it, so did 8 years of my breath. I said nothing. Not even when they bumped the frame into the door on the way out like amateurs moving a Craigslist couch. I just stared, letting the silence hang in my throat like a shot of motor oil. My fists were in my pockets to keep from shaking, not from fear, from restraint. Because if I opened my mouth, someone was getting verbally incinerated. That wouldn't serve the plan. I had already started the plan. Night before, while Greg was probably polishing his PowerPoint transitions and watching YouTube videos about executive presence, I've been quietly crafting a secure data capsule on a thumb drive with a biometric lock. That drive held the validator override keys, back-end recovery scripts, and a beautifully annotated ledger of every system-level change I'd ever implemented. Last line I typed was a single command, initiate fail-safe protocol 9x echo. It didn't execute anything, yet it just waited. I also drafted a brief message to legal. Nothing threatening, nothing aggressive, just documentation, the kind of email that gets archived and ignored until suddenly it isn't. At 9:22 a.m., I walked to my desk, grabbed my coffee mug, a folder of onboarding forms, and a single red envelope marked "If found, please return to Amanda N." Inside was a dead USB stick from 2014 and a paperclip, just enough to confuse someone if they got curious. I told Tanya from HR I'd be working remotely for a few days. No drama, no explanation. She blinked a few times, clearly unsure if I was being laid off or promoted. I didn't clarify. I took the back stairwell down. Same one I used when the site went live for the first time. Back when we were 6 people in a dream, and the server rack was 2 crates and a fan I bought from Home Depot back when people gave a damn. Back then, I used to carry that rack up and down the stairs when we moved buildings. Now they wheeled it out like junk, but I wasn't panicking. Panic is a luxury for people who don't have a plan. I had one. I had it for months, because when you've watched 3 CEOs come and go, seen a dozen restructurings, budget freezes, ransomware scare, and Greg's kind of smug nepotism in 6 flavors, you learn. You don't scream. You don't argue. You wait. At home, I booted up the Mirror node. My node, quiet little clone of the system nobody knew about, humming in a temperature-controlled closet I built after the 2020 server room flood, taught me the value of redundancy. I watched the logs flicker across the screen. Payment confirmation cycle slowing. Duplicate ID flags ticking up. Minor anomalies stacking like termites in drywall. They hadn't noticed yet, but they would. And by the time they realized what Greg had done, unplugging the validator, the real validator, they'd already be bleeding. Refunds, failed orders, broken promo codes, ghost cards haunting their CRM. Me. I'd be sipping tea waiting for the knock, not because I wanted it, but because they would need it, bad. Started like all tech meltdowns do. Quiet, irritating, and conveniently someone else's fault. 2 days after the rack was wheeled out like a busted jukebox, the first ticket hit the help desk queue. A customer reported getting double refunds for a single canceled order, then another, then 6 more, all different regions, all within a 2-hour window. Refund queue backed up like a clogged toilet, but no alarm sounded yet, just mild concern and the usual vendor shrug. Our outsourced IT team, a bunch of smug bastards halfway across the country with synergy in their job titles, called it regional congestion, said it was a DNS issue, maybe latency from a failover node syncing improperly. Their fix: purge the session cache and restart the microservice. Classic tech support bingo. Meanwhile, the order queue started throwing errors like a slot machine with a grudge. Transactions stuck in processing. Payment tokens timing out. Customers refreshing for hours then giving up and buying somewhere else. But the cloud dashboard still said operational, which is corporate speak for don't look behind the curtain. In the morning stand up, Greg popped into the Zoom call with a fresh haircut and that same teeth-whitening strip smile. So we had a little turbulence, but all systems are go, right? Then he laughed. Maybe someone should just reboot the cloud. I watched it from my kitchen table, earbuds in, feeding my dog the crust from my toast. Greg's voice sounded like cheap whiskey mixed with a drum circle. Every syllable made me want to set fire to a fiber cable. He didn't know. Not yet. See? What Greg never understood? What none of them did was that the server rack hadn't just run the validator. It corrected it. It patched asynchronous token drift in real time. Know how you can spin a coin and it looks like it's standing still? That's what my rack did to the transaction stream. Balanced chaos into precision. Without it, token IDs aged too fast. Timeouts overlapped. Refunds doubled because the back end couldn't confirm state without locking up. It wasn't a bug. It was entropy, a slow math-based disintegration, and they just let it loose. I leaned back in my chair and opened my private terminal. My mirror system, humming in its own little digital quarantine, had been quietly watching everything. Every lag spike, every abandoned cart, every misfire flagged with an ID like #echo validate protocol miss. Logs didn't lie. Unlike Greg, a drip became a trickle. A trickle became a leak. By midday, sales metrics showed a 6% variance between confirmed transactions and revenue capture. It was still within tolerance, Greg said, because he didn't understand that variances compound. He ended the meeting early to focus on deliverables. Translation: call a friend who once built a Shopify plugin and ask for advice. I didn't gloat. Not yet. There's no joy in watching a plane crash you warned them about, just a grim inevitability. I didn't want chaos, but I knew it was coming. I could see it blooming in the logs like rot. Silent, beautiful, unstoppable. Entropy doesn't scream. It whispers. By Friday morning, the dashboard started lying. To be clear, they weren't just wrong. They were contradicting each other in real time. Sales team saw a $480K day. Accounting saw $312K. Marketing's dashboard insisted we'd hit $530K and tried to run a celebratory Slack emoji parade. Then someone pulled up the refund totals, $97K. Nobody could reconcile what the hell we actually earned. It was like the company was being haunted by ghost revenue. One of the accountants, Linda, bless her overworked, under-caffeinated soul, lost it in the team chat. Are we making money or hemorrhaging it? Because QuickBooks says we're both. And the complaints? Jesus, they came in waves. Order still stuck in processing. I was charged twice and got nothing. I canceled yesterday and still haven't gotten my money back. One guy threatened to report us to the Better Business Bureau and his cousin who worked at Channel 8. I bookmarked that one for later. Seemed like a man of action. Then came the dev ticket that lit the fuse. A junior developer named Ethan, fresh out of college, still believed management read documentation and a detailed report to engineering flagged red and labeled urgent. I read the whole thing from my mirror system while sipping lukewarm coffee. Token loop mismatch. His exact words, "It looks like the backup validator isn't compensating for a synchronous token delay. The timestamps are diverging too fast. We're stacking orders before we close the prior ones, basically creating digital echo transactions that don't finalize properly." It was beautiful, poetic, accurate. It was also his last act as an employee. Greg, in his infinite wisdom and insecure jaw-clenching panic, fired him on the spot, said he was spreading unnecessary drama and disrupting morale with theoretical panic. No severance. No HR rep present. Just a digital pink slip and a Slack message that said "Thanks for your service, Ethan." I watched it unfold. Ethan's access revoked. His email signature blanked. Just like that. Other loose threads snipped before it could unravel the quilt Greg was using to tuck in his ego. That's when I sent the email. No name. No threat. Just a soft, sweet little note to the legal team routed through a secure third-party relay. Protocol Echo 9. Reference lines 45 to 78 Invalidator Patch Notes v2.7b. Suggested reading timeline, immediate, short, surgical, just enough to spook a lawyer into digging. Protocol Echo 9 wasn't public knowledge. It was an internal patch reference I buried in the infrastructure manual 3 years ago detailing the exact scenario we were now living through. A fail-safe for token drift failures in the absence of real-time synchronous correction. ACA, what happens when you unplug my damn server? I didn't want to burn the place down. But legal's job is to fear the smell of smoke. By close of business, half of engineering was in triage mode. The sales team was asking for manual overrides, and Greg was offsite, taking calls, probably stress Googling things like how to diagnose cloud failures and his junior dev sabotage reel. He wouldn't find an answer because the answer was me, and I hadn't even touched a damn thing. The emergency meeting invite came in at 7:58 a.m. on a Saturday. Object line, Sparkles Q2 System Sync Touchpoint Sparkles, which is Greg speak for "Oh God, the plane is on fire," and I just taped over the altimeter with a smiley face sticker. 12 people joined the Zoom. Only 2 turned their cameras on. Everyone else looked like they'd either been crying or calculating how long they could coast on severance. Greg, of course, looked like he'd just applied under eye concealer and practiced his lines in front of a ring light. "Okay, team," he began, flashing that used car grin. "I know there's been some noise around the transaction pipeline, but I want to assure everyone this is minor turbulence, routine even." He said routine like we were just cleaning out fridge odors, not hemorrhaging revenue like a gutshot racehorse. "I've already reached out to our cloud partners, and PR is drafting messaging. We'll lead with transparency and ownership. Translation, we're going to lie as vaguely as possible and hope no one checks the math." Then came the kicker. "As for the validator logs engineering's on it. We've got backups of backups. It's just a visibility hiccup." My phone vibrated. A former colleague, Sarah from back-end, texted, "You locked it, didn't you?" I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because there was nothing to say. She knew. They all knew now. Greg was bluffing like a man playing poker with Uno cards. "See those validator logs? The ones showing where the payment flow was rupturing, where refunds were triggering without corresponding charge closures? They were tied by design to a secure encrypted certificate, and that cert was tied to my fingerprint and a passphrase so weirdly specific no AI could guess it if you gave it a century and a whiteboard. And Greg couldn't even spell asynchronous without help. The engineering team had tried everything, rotating credentials, honing access, even asking one of the interns to brute force it like they were in a bad Netflix hacker drama. Nothing worked because there was no workaround. I built it that way. After that time in 2019 when Jenkins deleted a month's worth of sales logs and Greg's predecessor tried to pin it on legacy code, I promised myself never again, so I documented it, encrypted it, and kept the real keys offsite, synced only to one isolated terminal. Back in the meeting, one of the board members finally broke the silence. "So you're telling us we can't see the logs that show where the money is going?" Greg hesitated, flashed that smile like a gambler trying to bluff a royal flush with a pair of 4s. "We're just hitting a brief credentials mismatch, standard protocol drift. I've got folks resolving it now." I could see the panic behind his pupils. It wasn't just the system breaking. It was his image, his promotion pipeline, his LinkedIn glow-up dream. Shattering, shard by shard, PR chimed in. "We're suggesting language like proactive maintenance and infrastructure modernization. Thoughts?" Someone unmuted just long enough to cough the word bullshit and left the call. I sipped my tea, logs scrolling peacefully on my home setup. I had my feet up, dog snoring on the rug, air conditioner humming like nothing was wrong. I wasn't panicked. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was watching rot get sunlight, watching the fire that they lit burn its way through Greg's sandcastle of ego and half-truths, watching the architecture bend under weight it was never built to carry because they pulled out the keystone and called it streamlining. I didn't leak anything. I didn't break a law. I just let the truth do what it always does. Eventually, it screams loud enough to drown out every lie in the room. It happened at 11:42 a.m. on Saturday. Right in the middle of the much-hyped weekend Blitz sale, where everything from yoga mats to smartwatches was marked down 40% and advertised across 4 states, 2 influencer podcasts, and 1 very expensive bus wrap in downtown Phoenix. And then nothing. No processing. No thank you for your order. No revenue counter clicking up like a Vegas slot machine. Just dead air. The digital equivalent of stepping on the gas and watching the engine fall out of the car. Order confirmations vanished mid-transaction. Customers clicked buy now and got looped into limbo. One woman posted a screenshot of her cart stuck on a loading wheel for 23 minutes with the caption, "Is this part of the sale or a psychological experiment?" Another influencer, fitness guy named Ty Vaughn with 2 million followers and a six-pack that should be registered with the state, made a story where he just stared at the screen and whispered, "They scammed us." It got 500,000 views in 3 hours. His caption, #BlitzFail, #not sponsored anymore refunds began triggering automatically, not because someone approved them, but because the system couldn't confirm the charge date, so it defaulted to protect the customer, for $600,000 in misfired refunds within the first 2 hours. And the cherry on top, internal revenue dashboards froze at 12:03 p.m. sharp, just stopped ticking like a watch tossed in the ocean. The Slack threads turned into horror movie transcripts. Cerebi, can someone verify if the transaction bridge is down? Ron Finance, bridge, there's no bridge. The logs are blank. DevOps, Sam, nope. Logs are intact, just empty. As in, like, ever existed empty. Greg Darnell, team, it's just a temporary sync issue. No need to panic. Ron Finance, we are refunding phantom orders and not processing any new ones. I would like to panic now. Meanwhile, Greg was still tap dancing through Teams calls with lines like momentary turbulence, and the cloud just needs to hydrate. I swear on my life, he said that. Legal started poking around again, asking for Protocol Echo 9 documentation. One of the more nervous attorneys CC'd me by mistake. I didn't reply. No need to. Because that afternoon at 1:27 p.m., I got a text from Miguel, one of the few decent ones who stayed in engineering after the last layoffs. No greeting. No pleasantries. Just, did you know this was coming? I stared at it for a long second, then typed exactly 3 words. They unplugged it. That was it. No gloating. No villain monologue. Just the truth. Because that's what this always was. Not sabotage, not revenge. Just physics. Just cause and effect. They pulled the spine out of the organism and were now shocked it couldn't stand. You don't cut the brake line and then blame the tree. And me, I was baking banana bread, watching the collapse from my kitchen like it was Sunday football. Every log, every drop session, every misfired refund pinged my mirror system like confetti. It was beautiful, not because I wanted them to fail, but because it proved what I already knew. You don't mock what you don't understand, and you sure as hell don't unplug it. By Monday morning, the office smelled like a burnt-out server room in desperation. No one said it out loud, but the energy on the floor had shifted. Gone was the bro culture bounce Greg brought in like a dog with a frisbee. In its place, white-knuckled silence. Slack channels were ghost towns. Help desk backlog read like a war diary. Refund queues had metastasized, and worst of all, no one could say exactly how much money we'd lost. Then the forensic audit landed. Commissioned by the board, rushed by legal, and conducted by a third-party firm that charged by the hour like surgeons for hire. They didn't ask questions. They followed logs, timestamps, access trails, and packet flows. After 19 hours of digging through Greg's duct tape and hubris operation, they dropped the verdict like a guillotine blade. The backups weren't backups, they were mirrors. And not even complete mirrors, partial cloud-synced image nodes that required real-time validation to function, which meant that the moment Greg unplugged the original rack, the only source of master-side timestamp correction, all those shiny new systems had been flying blind. Hook and drift had crept in almost immediately. At first by milliseconds, then by seconds, then by fatal mismatches. Orders were authorized against expired tokens. Refunds were issued for transactions that didn't technically exist. Carts duplicated. Charges looped. By the time they realized the data wasn't just bad, it was radioactive. But the worst part, the system had been compensating for years quietly, manually, line by line, by me. Forensic team uncovered it in the logs. Daily entries, timestamp corrections, and fail-safe patches pushed manually under an admin key labeled a Norris Ovid. No cron jobs. No scripts. Just a woman and her terminal. Day in, day out patch. Validate, confirm, repeat. I never bragged about it. Never even put it in my KPIs because I wasn't doing it for recognition. I was doing it because it had to be done. And Greg, he finally got it. 8 that night, well past what HR would consider working hours, he was caught pacing the empty office barefoot in a white dress shirt stained with something that looked like panic sweat and coffee. One of the IT guys, Jules, saw him through the glass conference room wall, just standing there, holding one of the old backup drives like it might whisper an answer if he gripped it hard enough. And then he said it quietly to no one, maybe to God, maybe to the vending machine, unplugged the validator. The IT guy didn't respond, just watched him crumble because that's what this was now, a slow, involuntary collapse of a man who finally realized the thing he'd mocked was the only thing that had kept him propped up. Later that week, legal unearthed my documentation. 3 years of emails, internal memos, slide decks with titles like validator architecture limitations under token load, and the case for a hybrid redundancy layer, each stamped, dated, and followed by either no response or deprioritized for Q4. One email in particular stood out to Greg Darnell. Subject, critical validator dependency sent. March 3, 11:14 a.m. Greg, just flagging again that the cloud mirrors aren't independently validated. If the primary node is disabled, token to sync will spiral. Please confirm we're aligned on continuity strategy before any infrastructure decommissioning. Amanda N. Status marked as read. Never replied. No one could save him now, and I didn't have to lift a finger. The call didn't come from the CEO. It came from Rachel, their crisis PR fixer. Cool voice. Manhattan ZIP code. The kind of woman who could stop a media leak with one hand and ruin a man's NDA with the other. He left a voicemail so polite it practically curtsied, asking if I'd be open to a confidential conversation regarding a strategic advisory opportunity. Translation: the house is on fire, and you're the only one who remembers where the extinguisher is. I didn't respond right away. I finished my coffee, took the dog for a walk, watched the sun rise like it owed me interest, let them marinate. Then I replied with an email that contained no greeting, no fluff, terms, 3-month retainer, paid in full upfront, full administrative access, no oversight. I pick my own hours, my own tools, and who I do or don't speak to. Greg Darnell is removed publicly by Monday. No leave of absence, no transitioning roles. I want his badge deactivated and his Slack profile grayed out before I plug in a single goddamn cord. 4 hours later, the contract came through. Signed, sealed, every line approved. Didn't even negotiate, just added a line that said, "Welcome back, Amanda." Thank you. Pathetic. The next morning, I arrived at 8:01 a.m. Not because I had to, just because I knew the early crowd would see it. Same parking spot, same boots, same ID badge, only now it buzzed with a different weight. I scanned in, stepped into the lobby, and felt it. The hush, that weird loaded silence that follows a storm. The kind that tastes like coffee breath and dread. One said a word. A few engineers nodded awkwardly. Some avoided eye contact entirely. HR peeked through their glass terrarium like I was a saber-toothed tiger roaming through the cubicles. Even Tanya, the receptionist who once complimented my scarves for 3 years straight, just blinked and looked away. I didn't blame them. I walked past Greg's old office empty. The blinds drawn, the chair spun backward, a half-drunk protein shake still sweating on the desk. His nameplate was gone, just a faint rectangle where it used to be, like a tombstone someone tried to scrub clean. Someone had left a single sticky note on his monitor. 3 words, black Sharpie. Plug it back. I kept walking straight to the server room. My server room. The one they'd converted into multi-purpose storage after gutting the rack. I unlocked the cage, smelled the faint tang of metal and memory. Everything was right where I'd left it, just unplugged, like a cathedral with no choir. I knelt down, slid the power connector into place, and felt it beneath my hand. No big speech, no announcement, no slow clap from the engineers, just fans spinning up, lights blinking in steady knowing rhythm, the validator node syncing with my mirror system like two old friends shaking hands after a long silence. I checked the logs, tokens aligned, drift corrected, refund queue halted, sales queue rebalanced. Didn't take hours, it took minutes like it had been waiting the whole time. I stood up, dusted off my palms, and walked out without a glance back, and that was it. No banners, no applause, just restoration, precision, and the quiet satisfaction of watching something broken bend back into place because I said so. The validator came online at 8:19 a.m. No ceremony, no countdown, just a soft click, a blink of LEDs, the slow return of the used to lull me through long nights of crisis management. Within 90 seconds, the mirror nodes recognized the re-established authority. Within 5 minutes, the token drift corrected itself across all layers, and by the 10-minute mark, the sales engine began to breathe again. Live transactions flowed like water over unclogged pipes, refund queues bloated and snarling for days, thinned like smoke in open air. The confirmation loop had since Saturday lit back up with surgical precision. It didn't just work, it obeyed. The system didn't need fixing, it needed reminding. And now it remembered who built it. Upstairs, The board must have seen the metrics update in real time because someone leaked a screenshot of the internal revenue dashboard to a private Slack thread labeled Q3 Miracle. An entry stood out. Subject, Pretty Décor saves Q3 from Ron Finance Body. She didn't even reboot it. She just plugged it back in. Holy F. The email made the rounds fast. Someone added it to a meme with Greg's face photoshopped onto a Roomba under the caption "Streamline this." By noon, Greg's access was revoked. His calendar wiped. A brief statement was sent company-wide effective immediately. Reg Darnell has been relieved of his duties as Chief Financial Officer. We wish him the best in his future endeavors. There was no Zoom call, no farewell email, no fruit basket, just a vacuum where ego used to be. Some say he tried to frame the collapse on vendor negligence before legal showed him the patch logs with his digital signature approving the unplug order. Others say he broke down in the parking lot screaming into his AirPods about cancel culture for CFOs. Doesn't matter. He unplugged it. That's all anyone remembers. And me, I stayed late. Not for the company, not for glory, just to sit with it one last time. Server room B, the wall still lined with that awful beige paint, was back to its usual glow, rows of lights blinking their Morse code lullaby. I pulled a folding chair from the hallway, set my thermos down on the floor, and just sat there. No one disturbed me. No one dared. I sipped my coffee. It had gone lukewarm, but I didn't care. The validator thrummed beside me like a living thing perfectly calibrated, reunited with the grid it had been denied. Blameless, brutal, brilliant, and I said nothing because there was nothing left to say. He thought it was decoration. I knew it was detonation. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch flicking drama. Let's make your former co-workers sweat.